Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Danielle. Thank you for tuning in with me on this lovely Monday morning or Monday afternoon. Monday night, could be a Tuesday, whenever you're listening to this. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend, a well-rested, safe weekend filled with lots of football, specifically college football. I know I did absolutely nothing this weekend, and it was really great. I watched a lot of football, watched The Invisible Man, which I have to say is a fantastic movie. I was very skeptical about it. I saw it on HBO, and I'd heard great things about it from different podcasts, and I just decided, let's watch it, let's see how it is. And it was fantastic. So if you're in the need for a good Saturday night stay-in movie, I really recommend The Invisible Man. Great plot twist. That is besides the point. Hope you all had a socially distant and safe weekend. If you did go to a football game, you wore your mask, you stayed safe, and you just had a good time. The world's kind of crazy right now, especially with the presidential election coming up, and so I hope you all stay safe. I just want to say that. TikTok is not getting banned as well. That is big news, but no one really cares about that. I also want to say before I get into this episode that this is going to be a instant reactions episode. This is not going to be a full 90 minutes, get into news, breakdown, preview, everything. That is on Thursday. That is my new schedule. I will be doing instant reactions, so a shorter episode on Sundays with a longer episode on Thursday going into everything. So just want to clear that up. But yes, happy Sunday or Monday. We had another week of college football and the NFL. So let's go over week one, what we learned, big games to cover, etc. Last week was a little crazier than this week, I have to say. We definitely saw less upsets, but we saw some games around the rocks. So let's get into it with first game. We have number 13 Cincinnati against Austin Peay. This was Austin Peay's last game, I believe, of the season. They were an FCS team. Some statistics for it. Well, Cincinnati won 55-20. Some statistics for it. Ryder for the Cincinnati Wildcats. We have 13 of 19, 196 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also had 57 yards on the ground. We had Dokes, who had 4 receptions, 64 yards, and 1 touchdown. They had a while to kick off the season due to coronavirus and all the uncertainty in the world, but they got a good start of it. Dokes scored 4 touchdowns, including a career-high 3 rushing touchdowns, and Cincinnati beat Austin Peay 55-20. This was their season opener. Dokes said, "We showed them we're not a team to mess around," which is absolutely true. Ryder, their star quarterback, passed for 196 yards and 2 touchdowns. This game was originally scheduled for September 3rd, and this is the latest that they've actually started the season since 1968, since they played Texas Tech on September 21st. Coach Luke Fickell said, "It was like Christmas morning and you're 8 years old. You feel like you have a good opportunity with the guys you got, and now you see how the guys would handle things." The Cincinnati, they did have high hopes for the season. They finished 11-3 last season, and they were ranked 21 in the final AP poll. They started out this season at number 13. There's high hopes for them. Obviously, the weirder season, which is not as weird anymore because we got news this week that the Big Ten is coming back, which I will get into all on Thursday. Big rundown. I have a lot of thoughts on it, but I'm very excited for that to come back. But anyways, Dokes also said it's been a long time since I had that many carries and a chance to get the ball and take control. It felt good. So this was a career day for him as well. He had a 32-yard touchdown catch on 4th and 2 as well. On Austin Peay's side, junior quarterback Jeremiah Ostwell passed for 202 yards for Austin Peay, who are 0-3. They allowed 55 points in each of their past 2 games. And if you guys remember last week, they had a 55-0 loss to Pittsburgh, who won this week as well. And if you guys remember correctly, that game last week. They each played 2 10-minute quarters in the second half. Freshman running back C.J. Evans Jr. had 2 touchdowns for the Governors, including a 64-yarder in the fourth quarter. Austin Peay interim head coach Marquise Loving said, "We had a chance to play with the top 15 team. As a competitor, you hate to give up 55 points in a row no matter where you play, but we're able to show that we could play football even with all the things going on." There were no fans allowed in Nippert Stadium on Saturday due to the COVID-19 concerns. Immediate families and players and the coaches were allowed to be there. Fickle also said that, "I was worried about how the guys would handle the lack of emotion and energy in the stadium. They handled it really well. They were grateful to have the opportunity to play." So let's look at the big picture. Dokes has taken on even a larger role in the Bearcats' offense with the departure of Michael Warren Jr. He finished his career with 2,918 yards rushing. Dokes contributed to the passing game with 4 catches for 64 yards as well. He's going to be a leader, Fickle said. There's no question about that. And as Cincinnati is ranked number 13 in the AP polls, they are expected to rise this week due to their dominant performance over Peay, as well as the performance by other teams like Oklahoma and Miami and Louisville. But next up, Austin Peay is not yet scheduled yet. The Ohio Valley Conference plans to play a 7-league season in the spring. Cincinnati will host Army on Saturday in a game added to fill a void in the non-conference schedule after games against Nebraska, Miami of Ohio, and Western Michigan were canceled due to COVID-19. But obviously, Nebraska's coming back, so yes, this is non-conference. Cincinnati ranked number 13. What can we learn from this? We learned that they are not a team to be messed with. They are strong. Good rushing game. The rushing game will be the star of the show, as we saw yesterday. Not as much of an offensive team, but that's okay. Obviously, they're not playing a weaker opponent, but they're definitely not playing an Alabama or something. But it was good to see them back on the field and show that their number 13 ranking they had coming in to this season through the AP poll is well-deserved. So, yes, like I said, 55-20 Cincinnati. Next up, we have a quite an interesting game. If you guys remember last week, the University of Louisiana, I believe, they upset Iowa State, and this week they played Georgia Tech. Some stats for this game for Georgia State, not Georgia Tech. We have 22 of 39, 196 yards, 1 TD, and 1 interception. Coates added 34 carries, 150 yards, and 1 touchdown. Carter had 2 receptions, 53 yards, and 1 TD. On the Louisiana side, Lewis had 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Mitchell had 16 carries, 164 yards, and 2 touchdowns. David Fleming added 4 receptions for 81 yards. So the Raging Cajuns topped Georgia State 34-31 in a very tight contested game. If you guys remember, Louisiana Lafayette was unranked last week after Iowa State, and they jumped all the way to 19. Quite a bit of a surprise for many people, but they were ranked. This is the first time they've been ranked since 1943, following their 20-point win last week. Like I said, Lafayette was a 17-point favorite, but trailed 14-17 at the intermission, and Levi Lewis threw an interception on the opening drive of the second half. Georgia Tech answered by taking a 21-7 lead, leading on Marcus Carroll's 2-yard run, but the advantage didn't really last long. As we saw, the Raging Cajuns are a competitive team despite their not lackluster, but not as well-known history of success. Mitchell Lewis, who was the Raging Cajuns quarterback, completed 21 of 37 passes for 279 yards. He rolled left to complete a 4-yard touchdown pass that cut the lead to 21-14 midway through the third quarter, and then Mitchell got going, their star running back. We put our head in the game. It was going to come sooner or later. Senior running back bursted free into the left side for 2 long gains, a 59-yard touchdown lead that cut the tied it at 21 late in the third, and a 53-yard run early in the fourth that set up Trey Riggs' 2-yard touchdown run. He capitalized on people's mistakes, Lewis said. When you make the wrong move on him, it's going to be bad. Eli's real athletic, agile, hard to get down. It's hard to get that guy down. Georgia State tied it, however, on a 4-yard run with 7:37 remaining. It tied it at 28. Mitchell ran for 12 yards along the right side and was untouched as he crossed the goal for the final score in overtime. That gave the Raging Cajuns their win. The Panthers were trying to go for their first win over a ranked team in 7 tries. Justin Coates finished with 150 yards rushing and a touchdown for Georgia State. The Raging Cajuns offense, they went 1 for 9 on third down in the first half. They finally woke up after Garner intercepted Brown late in the second. And Lewis said, I kept telling my guys, just keep fighting, keep wood chopping. No matter what happens, we'll see what type of ball we have. We have a lot of ball to play. There's 2 quarters left in this game. So, Up next for Louisiana Lafayette, they host Georgia Southern next Saturday, and Georgia State will be at Charlotte next Saturday. So what did we learn from this game? We learned, kind of similar to the Cincinnati game, that the ranking that Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns got last week after their very surprising upset, to say the least. I was certainly shocked by the Iowa State game. We learned that they are contenders. They are the real deal. And with this weird season we have, you cannot discredit them. You cannot discredit that, and that they're a contender. And it'll be very interesting come bowl season to see where they end up. Can they continue the success they had? But also, again, Georgia Tech was not Georgia Southern, Georgia Tech, yes. They were not the toughest competition, but again, a great game over there, especially in overtime. Next up, we have the Syracuse Orange against the Pittsburgh Panthers, 21-10 Pitt. Pitt is now 2-0 on the season. And let's get into some stats. So for Pittsburgh, we had Pickett. He had 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Davis had 18 carries for 53 yards. And Wayne had 5 receptions, 59 yards, and 1 touchdown. On the Syracuse Orange side, Culpepper had 88 yards and 1 touchdown. Jordan had 13 carries for 40 yards, and Harris had 3 receptions for 72 yards and 1 touchdown. Pittsburgh coach Pat New Jersey watched the Panthers put together a nearly flawless practice last Tuesday, so perfect that he admitted he practically had to invent something to complain about. That won't be an issue going forward. They remain high on his team. They have number 25 Pitt definitely does have some work to do following the sloppy win over Syracuse. They're a week removed from their romp against the overmatched Austin Peay. Like I said previously, the Panthers looked very much like a team in progress against the Orange, who are now 0-2, 7 penalties, 3 missed field goals, and 2 turnovers allowed Syracuse to hang around well in the second half, but Pitt put it together behind a dominant defensive performance. That was the big thing, is that it was not a pretty game. This was not a shootout by any means. Syracuse, despite technically being undermatched, they were not ranked. Pittsburgh was seen as the favorite. This was not a pretty game. This is an ugly, in-the-trenches defensive game, and Pittsburgh pulled through. Head coach of the Panthers said, "It was a lot uglier than I'd like it to be. Disappointed more with just the penalties that we had. Some stuff that you don't expect to have at all." Newsy told the Panthers championships still don't do it. Still, that's a lesson Pitt learned in the victory. It certainly beats the alternative. It was definitely a sloppy game, said Penny Prickett. He threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for another score. Didn't play that kind of football we needed to play to get where we want to go. It's almost good that it happened. Yes, I agree with Prickett there. This was not a slip-up because they won, but this shows that they can't be lazy on the field like they were. Austin Peay was clearly outmatched last week, and so that was an easier game. I feel like they kind of came into this game similar to how Oklahoma State did against Tulsa, which we will get to. Kind of a sleepwalk. Saw the game as undermatched, if you will. But they have one of the best defensive sevens in the country. Pitt limited Syracuse to 171 total yards. 69 of them came on backup quarterbacks Rex Culpepper's second-half touchdown strike to a streaking Taj Harris. Syracuse mustered very little in the face of an unrelenting pass rush. The Panthers sacked Culpepper and started Tommy DeVito 7 times, rarely letting the quarterbacks get comfortable. Senior defensive end Rashid Weaver, he missed all of 2019 with a torn ACL on his right knee and was forced to sit out the opener due to a mixed result on a COVID-19 test, recorded 2 sacks in his first game in 20 months. That's absolutely crazy. 7 sacks. Their front 7 was unrelenting, and it showed. And once again, just because Syracuse is not Alabama, it was still a tough battle, and it was a defensive battle. The pivotal play of this game came late in the third quarter when Pitt's defensive back, Paris Ford, picked off a wayward screen pass to DeVito with the Orange and Panther territory and down 4. Prickett dove 66 yards in 8 plays, the final 17 on a touchdown pass over the middle to Jared Wayne. "If I get a strip sack, I'm going to put my whole elbow in it like Vince Carter," Weaver said. The takeaway, the Orange had brewing quarterback controversy, obviously. Culpepper came in as the backup. He beat testicular cancer in 2018. He provided the only splashy play on the Rainbow. How DeVito spent most of the afternoon running from one coverage against one of the top nation. DeVito completed 9 of 15 passes for 32 yards and a pick, while Culpepper went 4 of 9 with 88 yards and a score. There's definitely a quarterback competition there. However, it is more on the offensive line side. They've now allowed 14 sacks in 2 games. Syracuse coach Danielle Barb said, "At this stage of the game, we're going to set the record for sacks, and I don't plan on setting the record in 2020. So there's offensive line work that the Syracuse Orange need to do. And there's quarterback controversy brewing, which will be very interesting to see what happens in the following games. But let's get back on the Pitt side. The defense appears to be as good as everyone expected. The long pass to Harris was a hiccup and otherwise dominant defensive performance. The offense, however, does remain a little bit of a mystery. The running game situation remains unclear heading into the teeth of a schedule that's going to get tougher as the weeks pass, as it usually does in the season. With the poll implications, they probably did enough to justly sneaking into the rankings last week, but don't expect much upward movement because until they have success against a team with a little bit of pedigree, they're playing Louisville next week, which we will get to later, but that provides some opportunities. So they'll probably stay at 25. I don't see them falling out of the poll whatsoever because they did not lose, and we have not seen teams from the SEC start to play. But next week, the Syracuse Orange welcome Georgia Tech, and Pitt's continues to stretch where the Cardinals visit Heinz Field next Saturday. This is their fourth straight home game. This will be 4 straight home games to open the season.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And yes, next up on our list, we have Tulsa versus Oklahoma State. If you guys know, you know how much I love Oklahoma State, how much I have been raving about them all season. Their running game behind Chuba Howard is exceptional. They have one of the most powerful, dynamic offenses in the league. However, this game was postponed multiple times, as I've mentioned, due to COVID-19 concerns. Tulsa had an outbreak, they had to quarantine, and this game finally happened, and for many people, they saw that Oklahoma State saw this as a cakewalk. Obviously, Tulsa is a weaker opponent, but Tulsa definitely gave them a scare. But ultimately, Oklahoma State ended up winning 16-7. True freshman Shane Ellinger made Oklahoma State's unusually high-powered offense look normal for just long enough to help the 11th-ranked Cowboys avoid a huge upset. They stayed in with the defense, and Illingsworth rallied the Cowboys to a 16-7 victory over Tulsa. This is the season opener for both teams. Illingsworth went 4 for 5 for 74 yards. Chuba Howard went 27 carries, 93 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Wallace went 4 receptions for 94 yards. Those are the leading passers. On Tulsa's side, you have Smith. He went 166 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. For the rushing, you have Prince. He went 13 carries for 82 yards. And Jay Johnson had 5 receptions for 63 yards and 1 touchdown. Trailing 7-3 late in the third quarter, Oklahoma State received a big offensive spark when Illingsworth entered the game and initially connected on his first 3 passes, including two longest plays of the day, hitting Tyron Wallace for completions of 36 and 29 yards. Chuba Howard, who led the nation in rushing last year, was limited to 35 yards in the first half. His 3-yard touchdown run early in the fourth quarter, but Oklahoma State ahead for good. Illingsworth completed 4 or 5 passes, like I said, for 74 yards and just over a quarter of work. Freshman Alex Hale made 3 field goals, 2 in the fourth quarter from 27, 40, and 29. My Oklahoma State coach Mike Gundy said, "I was proud of this team. We were put in a unique position there for a while. How to regroup, particularly on offense. Defense was fantastic. I'm thrilled that the guys were fighting through all the adversity and finding a way to the end." The Golden Hurricanes, Tulsa had some trouble capitalizing on their opportunities, going 0 for 12 on third downs, while numerous poorly timed penalties also set them back. They ended up being flagged for 15 penalties, totaling 120 yards, which included a touchdown being taken off the board in the fourth quarter due to a false start on 3rd and goal. Tulsa coach Philip Montgomery said, just didn't put things where you had opportunities. Got to convert when you're in the red zone. We've got to make these opportunities count and finish them with touchdowns. But I was proud of our football team. I thought we played extremely hard and obviously just needed to get over the hump at the very end. This game took place a week after it was originally supposed to, with Tulsa requesting to requesting it to be rescheduled to better prepare for the season after missing 9 days of practice earlier in camp due to several players testing positive for coronavirus, which is pretty scary. They were one of the big teams around the nation that were reported to have a coronavirus outbreak. The Cowboys lost starting quarterback Spencer Sanders with an apparent right ankle injury late in the first half. So if you're wondering why starting quarterback Spencer Sanders was not there, that is why. He completed 2 of 2 passes for 23 yards, and he gained 9 yards on 5 rushes. Ethan Bullock, a junior college transfer from the City College of San Francisco, stepped in and was 8 of 13 for 41 yards, but had trouble moving the ball. Bullock had a couple things happen to him that weren't really his fault. We got to get to a point where we were kind of stale, and I felt like that needed to change. This is what Gundy said on switching to Illingsworth. I think Illingsworth handled it really well. Again, he's a true freshman, and there was no intention on him playing. Hubbard, he was last season's Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, was bottled up for most of the game. He said, "I wasn't frustrated. It's just football. It's going to be like that sometimes. Sometimes you got to ground and pound, and sometimes you have holes that you can shoot right through. At the end of the day, obviously, it wasn't a clean win. We have a lot of things to work on, but we won, and that's all that matters." This was not a clean game. Like I said, similar to the Pitt game and Syracuse game, very in the trenches, not a clean game, not one of those games that are easy on the eyes. But Oklahoma State did come back with a win, and it's promising that Illingsworth was able to step in so quickly under such short notice. The big takeaway for the Cowboys is that they become more one-dimensional once Spencer Sanders left due to his injury. The vast majority of their plays were attempted to run the ball with Trevor Howard at the end of the first half. The disparity was 27 rushing plays compared with 6 passing attempts. Wallace, who led Oklahoma State with 5 receptions for 903 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2019, despite missing the final 5 games with an ACL injury, was never even targeted for a pass in the first half. So the big thing is that Oklahoma State needs to rely more on its passing games. If Spencer Sanders comes back, which we hope they do, they don't know the severity of his injury yet, but they hope that he comes back because the offense cannot be this one-dimensional as they move into games against Oklahoma and Texas and Iowa State and bigger, tougher opponents. And given how much Oklahoma State struggled in this game, they will probably drop in the polls this week. It was a subpar performance at best. There's no question about that. They were favored by over 20, I believe, and to see them just put up such a lackluster snooze fest, in all honesty, they will fall. There's no question about that. They're ranked number 11 right now. And how much they will fall does depend on the teams below them, how they wind up doing during the day. Like I said, Pitt, Cincinnati, they won. So Cincinnati could move up and Oklahoma State could fall. We will see. Last word that Wallace had on the quarterback for me was just a bit surprising. Wallace said regarding the performance of Illingsworth, who spent some time during the preseason being quarantined, seeing him, I know he can play, I know he can run, I know he can do what he's supposed to do, but with him being a freshman and the first time out there, playing on the big stage, you don't really know what to expect. He definitely exceeded my expectations, went out there and did his thing, and I'm so proud of him. Oklahoma State will begin Big 12 conference action next Saturday at home against West Virginia. Let's get on to our next game of the day in the top 25. This one is a snooze fest. I'm not even going to give you guys a recap of it. It was Notre Dame, USF, University of South Florida, 52-0. Notre Dame. Ian Bach passed for 12 of 19, 143 yards. Flymester had 13 carries, 127 yards, and 1 touchdown. Tremble had 3 receptions for 60 yards. That's really all you guys need to know. It was a blowout. You know it's bad when you go on the NFL college football websites and there's no simple recap to look over and no highlight tape. It's literally just here's the box score. So yes, do with that what you will. But Notre Dame is now 2-0 and they are continuing their hot streak next week. Next up, this is a pretty exciting game, I gotta say. I was able to watch this. This is one of the few games I was able to watch because of cable restrictions, obviously. But UCF versus Georgia Tech, University of Central Florida. You guys remember a few years ago, if you were tuned into college football, back then, they were kind of the darlings of football. Should they make the college football playoffs, they were undefeated, but they're in the AAC, so they did not. All question around that, they are ranked number 14th, I believe, this season. Let me double check that. They ranked number 13th, it looks like, for this week. Excuse me, my mistake. That means Cincinnati is 14. I apologize for that miscommunication and error on my part, but Cincinnati is 14 and UCF is ranked 13th after this game. Let's get into it. So, passing leaders for Georgia Tech, you had Jay Sims, who went 18 of 36, 244 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Sims also had 82 yards on the ground and 1 touchdown, and Gibbs had 4 receptions, 6 yards, and 1 touchdown. On the UCF night side, you had Gabriel, who had 27 for 41, 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Anderson had 18 carries, 88 yards, and 1 touchdown, and Williams had 10 receptions, 154 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The sophomore threw for a career best 417 yards and 4 touchdowns, leading the number 14 Knights to a 49-21 victory over Georgia Tech in their season opener. So they were ranked number 14 yesterday, and Cincinnati was 13. There we go. My confusion. I'm very sorry. It was a very rewarding performance for UCF, coming off the uncertainty of the pandemic-affected summer and disappointing season by the standards in 2019. They lost 3 games all on the road by a total of 7 points. That was a weak season for them compared to the last 2 seasons. They've been very dominant on the field. And after falling behind 28-7, Georgia Tech closed within a touchdown early in the fourth quarter. However, Gabriel led a dominant performance the rest of the way, finishing 27 of 41 to eclipse his previous high of 365 yards in a game last season at East Carolina. Gabriel said, "We had so many guys making plays all over the field. When that happens, you see what you can do." UCF bounced back after giving up a long return and falling behind less than a minute into the game. Trey Nixon and Marlon Williams each pulled in a touchdown. Gabriel, a left-handed passer from Hawaii who claimed the starting job early into his freshman year, is the one who makes the fast-paced offense go. From the first snap, he has his eyes in the right place. He understands protections, UCF coach Josh Heppel said. Coming off a 3-9 season in Geoff Collins' coaching debut, Georgia Tech opened 2020 by rallying for a 16-13 win against Florida State. If you guys remember last week, I talked about the demise of Florida State and how that game really sentimentalized that, and that Georgia Tech could be a contender, kind of, but I think that shows more of Florida State's ability rather than Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech simply made too many mistakes in this game before a socially distant crowd, about 11,000 at a 55,000 seat Bobby Dodd Stadium. We put up a lot of numbers and a lot of yards, but we need to capitalize in the red zone, and we cannot turn the ball over, said Collins, whose team was missing several big plays. After they returned they had an opening kickoff of 75 yards, setting up a quarterback Jeff Sims' 1-yard touchdown run 55 seconds to the game. UCF responded with a 75-yard drive, capped by Gabriel's 6-yard touchdown pass to Nixon. Gabriel did poke a little fun at Florida State. If you guys don't know, the whole state of Florida has a little rivalry, and he said, "You saw what happened last week. I guess we can say we're the best team in Florida." The big takeaway from this is they are one of the leading contenders from the group of 5. Gabriel is a dynamic quarterback who fits perfectly into the up-tempo offense, and we should see UCF return back to its dominant form this season. They are definitely expected to be in the top 10 and make a run for the college football playoffs again, and maybe show that you don't need to be a Power 5 team to make the playoffs. Next up, Georgia Tech, UCF will play its second straight road game facing East Carolina, and Georgia Tech will return to the Athletic Coast Conference with a trip to Syracuse next Saturday. So, very exciting stuff. UCF is definitely one of the more exciting teams this season to watch out for. And last 2 games we have today, Clemson versus the Cadell. Again, nothing to say here. Trevor Lawrence threw 9 passes Saturday, and 3 of them went for touchdowns. He went 8 for 9, 168 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Travis Etienne had 8 carries, 468 yards. Larson had 3 receptions, 87 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was a blowout kind of day. Lawrence and started running back Travis Etienne. They got plenty of rest as the top-ranked Tigers rolled to a 49-0 victory. Like I said, he went 8 for 9 for 168 yards and 3 touchdowns. Kind of crazy. Clemson is still the number 1 team in the country after the AP poll released today. No doubt about that. They are still clearly the best team in the nation. With the return of the SEC next week, it'll be very interesting to see. The best thing about the Cadell is that the Bulldogs could be the $450,000 they got from the Clemson for the game. They did hold the Tigers backups off the scoreboard the final 2 quarters with 2 fourth down stops and a fumble recovery. Clemson put the game away early, and no one got hurt. Heading into an off week, Travis Etienne continued to hit their strong play, as well as Lawrence, and they look more dominating when they will continue ACC play in 2 weeks. Since Clemson was one of the only top 6 team playing, they will not be dropping the number 1 polls, which they did not. Clemson continues its 3-game homestand against Virginia on October 3rd. Cadell has played its only home game of its 4-game fall football schedule against Eastern Kentucky on Saturday. Last game I want to touch on today, everybody, is University of Miami, the Miami Hurricane versus the Louisville Cardinal. This was an exciting game on Saturday night. Great way to start Saturday. I was sitting on the couch with some pizza. It was a great night. 47-34 Miami. For Louisville, Cunnings went 26 of 36 yards, 307 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Hawkins went 27 carries, 164 yards, and 1 touchdown. Atwell went 8 receptions, 114 yards, and 2 touchdowns. On Miami's side, King, who was a transfer from University of Houston, went 18 carries, 18 of 30. He had 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. Harris had 9 carries, 134 yards, and 1 touchdown. Jordan had 7 receptions, 120 yards, and 1 touchdown. King threw 3 touchdown passes, and number 17 used the big plays to beat number 18 Miami. This was the big game of the week, 17 versus 18. I believe the first ranked opponent game we've had. This was the ACC opener for both teams. King threw for a 75-yarder touchdown pass tonight, and in the third quarter, a series after Cameron Harris ran for 75 yards on the way to a score. Miami led 20-6 at halftime before Louisville scored twice in a wild third to get within 7. The Hurricanes answered both touchdowns on their next stop with an unbalanced look against an out-of-place defense. The Canes had 10 chunk plays of at least 18 yards, including 7 passing. Head coach Manny Diaz said, "We talked about creating more explosive plays throughout the passing game, which we were able to do. We obviously have some through the running game as well. We still can do so much better. The explosive games, it is who we want to be," said Louisville coach Scott Satterfield. "Just too many big plays, two play drives that went for 6. We got to at least make the offense drive the ball." King also hit Bevan Jordan with a 47-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. So as we will see, already ranked lower than expected, Miami will figure to move up after an impressive road win at Louisville. This loss, while they put up a fight, they still had a double-digit loss against Miami. A good team, but they were ranked only 1 below. There's a chance they could move out of the ranking entirely, which will be very interesting to see. And let's look at the AP poll today that came out in 1 second. But yes, it looks like Louisville will move out of the ranking, and the Hurricanes did score on 4 consecutive drives. It is clear their offense is going to be the star of the show this season. There's no question about that. King was a star quarterback transfer from the Houston Cougars, and their defense did struggle at times, but the Cardinals have some speedy playmakers, and they did force 2 turnovers. So you have to look at that. And Louisville aiming to atone for last year's 52-27 drubbing in South Florida. The Cardinals instead let another early lead slip away. The defense reverted to last season's tendencies to allow big plays and completely flummox those touchdowns. Up next, Miami will host its in-state rival Florida State on Saturday, seeking its 4th consecutive win over the Seminoles, and Louisville will visit Pittsburgh on Saturday. So let's look at the AP poll before we get going. At number 1, we have Clemson. That stayed the same. They got 59 votes. Alabama got 1 vote this week. Oklahoma at number 3, Georgia at 4. Florida at 5, LSU number 6, Notre Dame at number 7. Number 8 is a tie between Auburn and Texas. Texas did move up 1 in the polls this week. Miami was moved up to number 12 this week. UCF was moved up 1, and Cincinnati was moved down 1. Oklahoma State moved down to 15. Tennessee moved down 1. Tennessee moved to 16, but again, they've not played. Memphis moved down to 1. After they've had to cancel yet another game due to coronavirus concerns. BYU moved up 3 to number 18. Pittsburgh moved up from number 1 to 21. Louisville moved down 6 to 24. So it is clear they are still there. And Marshall moved into the rankings at number 25. They are non-ranked. Let's look at the teams that have not played yet. Next weekend is obviously the SEC opener. So you have Alabama playing next week, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Auburn, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Virginia Tech, Kentucky. Those teams have not played yet. It'll be very interesting to see how next season goes with the coaches poll. At number 3, you have Oklahoma and Georgia tied. Obviously, Clemson received 44 votes, but this week with the news that the Big Ten will be back in the coaches poll, Ohio State was moved in, as well as Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, and Penn State. Very exciting stuff, you guys. And I do want to say about the news of Florida State head coach Mike Novell contracting the coronavirus COVID-19 disease. I wish him the best. I wish him well rest. We'll get into all of that next week. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today to a quick little instant recap episode. I will talk to you all on Thursday. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. If you could, please remember to give us a ranking, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out on iTunes and the platforms in general. Don't forget to follow us on our social media handles, Twitter and Instagram. And with all of that, I will talk to you all later. Have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast. part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.